Hey everyone, I'm Jessica, and I honestly never thought I'd be telling this story publicly, but I'm at my breaking point and I need some perspective because I genuinely don't know if I'm handling this situation correctly or if I'm being too harsh. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound like something out of a soap opera, but I swear on everything that matters to me that every word is true, and it's been tearing my life apart for the past 2 years. I'm 26 years old now, and this whole mess started when I was 11, so we're talking about 15 years of complete emotional devastation that shaped who I am today. My mother, Linda, was always what you'd call a free spirit, but when I was little, she was still somewhat of a mother figure in my life. She was married to my biological father until I was about 8, and while their relationship was rocky, she was still around, still picked me up from school sometimes, still made dinner occasionally, basic mom stuff that I took for granted back then. Everything changed when my parents got divorced and my mother started what she called her journey of self-discovery. She met this guy named Marcus at some kind of alternative lifestyle meetup, and suddenly her entire personality shifted overnight. She started talking about how traditional relationships were oppressive, how monogamy was unnatural, how she had been living a lie her entire life and needed to explore her authentic self. At 11 years old, I didn't understand what any of this meant. I just knew that my mom was acting weird and spending less and less time at home. Marcus introduced her to this whole world of open relationships and alternative lifestyles that completely consumed her. She would disappear for days at a time, going to these parties or gatherings or whatever they called them, leaving me with my grandmother or sometimes just leaving me alone in the house with a $20 bill and instructions to order pizza. My father was fighting for custody, but the legal system moved slowly, and during those months of limbo, I was basically raising myself while my mother explored her newfound freedom. The breaking point came when I was 12 and started 7th grade. My mother sat me down one evening and told me that she had decided to move to Las Vegas with Marcus to pursue opportunities in the adult entertainment industry. She explained it like she was telling me about a new job at an office, saying that she had always been interested in that type of work and that Marcus had connections that could help her get started. She said it would be temporary, maybe a year or two, and that once she got established and saved some money, she would come back for me. I remember sitting there in complete shock, not really understanding what she was telling me but knowing instinctively that something terrible was happening. She assured me that I would be fine living with my grandmother, that this was actually better for me because I would have more stability, and that she would visit as often as possible and call every week. She made it sound like she was doing me a favor, like this was some kind of sacrifice she was making for my benefit. Within 2 weeks, she was gone. Marcus picked her up in his convertible with all her belongings packed into suitcases and boxes, and she hugged me goodbye like she was going on a vacation. She promised she would call that weekend and that she would be back for my birthday in 3 months. I stood in my grandmother's driveway watching the car disappear around the corner, and somehow I knew deep down that my mother was never coming back, at least not as the person I had known. My grandmother, bless her heart, did her absolute best to fill the void that my mother had left, but she was already in her 70s and suddenly found herself responsible for a traumatized 12-year-old girl. She had raised her own children decades earlier and wasn't prepared for the emotional complexity of helping me process what had happened. My father was still fighting in court for custody, but it was complicated because my mother hadn't legally abandoned me. She had just left me with family temporarily. The promised phone calls never came. The first few weeks, I would sit by the phone every weekend waiting for it to ring, but it never did. My birthday came and went without so much as a card. Christmas passed with no word from her. I started having nightmares and anxiety attacks, and my grades plummeted because I couldn't concentrate on anything except wondering why my mother had chosen her new life over me. Over the next few years, I would occasionally get random postcards from different cities, usually Las Vegas or Los Angelus, with messages like thinking of you, sweetheart, or hope you're doing well in school, but never with any real information about when she might visit or how I could reach her. The postcards became less frequent as time went on, sometimes with gaps of 8 or 9 months between them. By the time I was 16, I had stopped expecting anything from her at all. My grandmother helped me through high school, and my father eventually got partial custody, so I split my time between their houses. Both of them tried their best to be supportive, but there was always this underlying sadness in our family dynamic because everyone knew that my mother's abandonment had fundamentally changed who I was as a person. I became very independent, very guarded about my emotions, and extremely cautious about trusting people who claimed to love me. I graduated high school, went to college, and built what I thought was a pretty good life for myself. I got a degree in marketing, found a job I enjoyed, and even started dating someone seriously. For several years, I rarely thought about my mother except when someone would ask about my family or when I would see mother-daughter relationships in movies that reminded me what I had missed out on. I had learned to live with the hole she had left in my life, and I thought I had moved past the worst of the emotional damage. Then, 2 years ago, everything changed again. I was 24, living in my own apartment, feeling like I had finally gotten my life on track, when I started receiving packages at my front door. The first one was a designer handbag that cost more than I made in a week, with a note that said, "For my beautiful daughter, with all my love, Mom." I thought there had been some kind of mistake, maybe it was meant for someone else, but my name and address were clearly written on the label. More packages started arriving over the next few weeks. Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, luxury skincare products, all with notes from my mother telling me how much she loved me and how sorry she was for being away for so long. I had no idea how she had gotten my address, since I had moved several times since high school and had never given it to anyone in her family. The gifts were beautiful and expensive, but receiving them felt like being slapped in the face because they represented everything she could have provided for me as a child but chose not to. Then she started showing up at my workplace. I work at a marketing firm downtown, and one day I was leaving the building when I saw a woman standing by the entrance who looked familiar but older and more polished than I remembered. It was my mother, and when she saw me, she ran over and tried to hug me like we had seen each other just yesterday. I was so shocked that I just stood there frozen while she hugged me and cried and told me how much she had missed me. She looked completely different from the woman who had left me 12 years earlier. She was dressed in expensive clothes, had obviously had some cosmetic work done, and carried herself with a confidence that was both impressive and infuriating. She started talking rapidly about how she had gotten her life together, how she had made some good investments and was financially stable now, how she had been thinking about me every day for all these years and was finally in a position to be the mother I deserved. I managed to tell her that I needed time to process this and that she couldn't just show up at my job unannounced, but she kept talking over me, asking about my life, my job, whether I was dating anyone, like we were old friends catching up rather than a mother who had abandoned her child. She gave me her phone number and begged me to call her so we could have dinner and really talk about everything. I took the card just to get her to leave, but I had no intention of using it. The gifts continued arriving, now accompanied by longer letters where she would share details about her life over the past 15 years. She told me about traveling around the country, about the different places she had lived, about Marcus and how their relationship had eventually ended, about other relationships she had been in, about her work in adult entertainment and how she had transitioned into something she called lifestyle consulting, which I gathered was some kind of high-end escort service for wealthy clients. What bothered me most about these letters wasn't the details about her lifestyle, although those were certainly uncomfortable to read about, but the way she wrote about her choices like they had been inevitable, like she had been forced into abandoning me by circumstances beyond her control. She never took real responsibility for choosing to leave me, instead framing it as something that had happened to both of us, like we were both victims of the same tragedy rather than her being the person who had caused the tragedy in the first place. She started calling my work phone, somehow having gotten the number from the company directory, and would leave long voicemails telling me about her day and asking about mine. She found my social media accounts and began commenting on old photos and posts, acting like a proud mother who had been following my life all along. She even reached out to some of my friends, introducing herself as my mother and asking them about how I was doing, which was mortifying because I had to explain to people why this woman they had never heard me mention was suddenly claiming to be my mother. The situation escalated when she showed up at my apartment building. I don't know how she found out where I lived, but one evening I came home from work to find her sitting in the lobby with more gifts and a huge bouquet of flowers. She had been waiting there for hours, according to the security guard, and had been telling everyone who passed by that she was waiting for her daughter. When I saw her, I felt this overwhelming combination of rage and panic that I had never experienced before. She followed me to the elevator, talking the entire time about how proud she was of the woman I had become, how she could see that I had inherited her strength and independence, how she knew we could have a wonderful relationship now that we were both adults. I told her she needed to leave and stop contacting me, but she kept talking like I hadn't said anything, like my words were just obstacles she needed to talk around rather than boundaries she needed to respect. That's when she told me she had been saving money for me all these years, that she had an account with over $50,000 that was meant to be mine, that she wanted to help me buy a house or start a business or whatever I wanted to do with my life. She said she knew money couldn't make up for the time we had lost, but she hoped it could be the foundation for building a new relationship. The idea that she thought she could buy her way back into my life after 15 years made me angrier than I had ever been. I finally managed to get away from her and into my apartment, but she continued to call and text and send gifts. She started sending flowers to my workplace with notes about how much she loved me and how she understood I needed time but wanted me to know she wasn't giving up on us. My coworkers started asking questions, and I had to have an incredibly awkward conversation with my boss about my personal situation affecting my professional environment. The worst part was when she contacted my grandmother and my father, both of whom were as shocked as I was to hear from her after all these years. She told them she wanted to plan a family reunion, that she hoped they could all help her reconnect with me, that she understood everyone was probably angry with her, but she was a different person now and wanted to make things right. My grandmother, who had spent years helping me work through the trauma of being abandoned, was polite but firm in telling her that she needed to respect my wishes and give me space. My father was less diplomatic. He told her exactly what he thought about her sudden reappearance and her attempts to force a relationship with me, and he made it clear that if she continued to harass me, he would help me pursue legal action against her. But even his intervention didn't stop her completely, it just made her more strategic about her approach. She started timing her appearances around my schedule, showing up at the coffee shop where I bought my morning coffee, at the grocery store where I shopped on weekends, at the gym where I worked out after work. It was never quite stalking in a legal sense, because she was always in public places and never threatened me, but it felt like psychological harassment because I never knew when or where she might appear with her gifts and her desperate attempts to force a conversation. The emotional toll of all this has been incredible. I thought I had processed my abandonment issues and moved past them, but having her suddenly back in my life, demanding attention and forgiveness and a relationship, has brought back all the pain I experienced as a child. I've started having anxiety attacks again, I've had trouble sleeping, and I've found myself questioning everything I thought I knew about moving forward from childhood trauma. What makes it even more complicated is that part of me, the little girl who never stopped wanting her mother, is tempted by her offers. The gifts are beautiful, the money would genuinely be life-changing, and there's a fantasy where we could somehow build a relationship and I could finally have the mother I always wanted. But the rational adult part of me knows that accepting any of it would be validating her belief that she can abandon me for 15 years and then buy her way back into my life whenever it becomes convenient for her. The most frustrating part of this whole situation is how other people have reacted when I tell them about it. So many people, even close friends, have suggested that I should at least give her a chance, that everyone deserves forgiveness, that she's clearly trying to make amends and I should be grateful that she wants to be part of my life now. They act like I'm being unreasonable or vindictive for not wanting to rebuild a relationship with someone who chose to abandon me during the most formative years of my life. Some people have pointed out that she was young when she left, only in her early 30s, and that people change and grow and deserve second chances. They suggest that maybe she was going through something difficult at the time and made choices she regrets now. But what they don't understand is that her age and her circumstances don't change the impact her choices had on me, and they don't obligate me to sacrifice my emotional well-being to make her feel better about her past decisions. I've been in therapy trying to work through all of this, and my therapist has helped me understand that my mother's current behavior is actually a continuation of the selfishness she showed when she abandoned me. She's not approaching me with genuine respect for my autonomy and my healing process. She's trying to force her way back into my life on her timeline according to her needs, just like she forced her way out of my life 15 years ago according to her needs then. The gifts, the surprise visits, the refusal to accept my boundaries, all of it is about what she wants rather than what's best for me. If she truly wanted to make amends and rebuild our relationship, she would have approached me with humility and respect. She would have given me space to process her reappearance on my own terms, and she would have accepted that I might not be ready or willing to have a relationship with her. Instead, she's trying to overwhelm me with material gestures and emotional manipulation, hoping that if she just tries hard enough and spends enough money, she can force me to forgive her and move forward like the abandonment never happened. It's the same kind of impulsive, self-centered decision-making that led her to abandon me in the first place, just applied in the opposite direction. So I've made the decision to maintain complete no contact with her. I've blocked her phone number. I've had the apartment building add her to a list of people who aren't allowed in the building. I've returned every gift she's sent unopened, and I've asked my workplace security to watch for her and ask her to leave if she shows up again. It's been difficult to enforce these boundaries because she's persistent and creative about finding new ways to contact me, but I'm committed to protecting my peace of mind. I know that some people will think I'm being too harsh, that I should be grateful she wants to be in my life now, that I should take advantage of her financial offers to improve my situation. But I've learned that my emotional health is worth more than any amount of money or any relationship built on guilt and manipulation. The little girl in me who wanted her mother back died a long time ago, and the adult I've become doesn't need someone who abandoned me to validate my worth or complete my family. I'm sharing this story because I want other people who have been abandoned by parents to know that you don't owe your parents forgiveness just because they decide they're ready to be parents again. You don't have to accept someone back into your life just because they share your DNA or because other people think you should give them a chance. Your healing and your boundaries are more important than anyone else's guilt or regret, and you have every right to protect yourself from people who have hurt you, even if those people are your parents. I don't know if my mother will ever stop trying to force her way back into my life, but I know that I'm finally strong enough to keep saying no, no matter how expensive her gifts get or how many people tell me I should forgive her. Some bridges can't be rebuilt, and some damage can't be undone, and that's okay because I've built a good life without her and I don't need her validation or her money to be complete.